Hello, this is a video that's going to show you how to create a beautiful looking APA style formatted table for any research purposes. So this tutorial will be helpful if you don't use or don't have to have APA formatting. The table formattings are fairly consistent, and this is just generally the most cleanest, clearest way to present data in a table. Okay, so in Microsoft Word, we can create tables absolutely fine. One of the first things that we want to do is to flip our page from being portrait, which is in this format here, to be in landscape, so essentially flipping it on its side, and this will allow us to add more information and make the table more readable to the readers. So what you can do is you can go to layout at the top and then go to orientation and then go to landscape. But what you'll notice if I do that is that it makes all of our pages landscape, which is not what we want to do. We want just the page with the table on to be a landscape. So I'm going to go back, and to do this effectively we have to come to this little button here, which essentially gives us more options on page setup. So we're going to select landscape again, but this time we're going to apply it to only this point forwards. And you'll see when I do that, our original page that would have, for example, our text on is kept in portrait, whereas our table page is kept in landscape. If we then create a new page after that, that will also be in landscape. So if you want to continue the table over multiple pages, you can do that. But if you want to finish the table and go back to writing text, you'll again just go to that same button and then hit portrait and then say this point forwards. It's important when you do this to have your cursor where you type in your text clicked and selected on the point where you want the page to return and flip back to the portrait style. So you can see before I selected this, my cursor was selected on this page, and then as I do that, you can see now we've got a single page that's ready to have a table created on it. So in terms of creating a table, this is really straightforward. We go to Insert at the top and go to Table, and it's going to ask us how many rows and columns do we want our table to be. If you have an idea of what this is already, that's fine, just put that down. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter what we select initially, because we can add or take away rows or columns as we need. So I just usually make a little grid like that, and then I will start to input my data. So across the top here are what we call columns, and across the bottom here are what we call rows. So in the columns section is going to be where we have our essentially our ways of categorizing our data. So for example, if we are doing a literature review and we wanted to put a summary of all of our research studies that we've found in our literature review into a table, it would look something like this. So we would just type in study, then maybe participants, then intervention, then for example outcome measure, and I've figured out that I probably want an extra column to display what the results of that study is. So to add a new column, you just highlight all of the cells on the final column in your table, like so, by click and holding, and then right click on that, and then go to Insert and Columns to the right, and that's just going to give you a new column like that. So therefore, I would write in results there. If you want to create extra rows, you can do the same process by highlighting all the rows and go and insert rows below. Or a more simple way is if you just hit the tab button on your keyboard, which will kind of be in the middle left side of your keyboard. Just keep hitting that and it will create new rows. You can then start to fill in the information. So for example, if I was doing a study here and I just filled it out with data, so intervention, let's say caffeine ingestion, outcome measure will say 5 kilometre time trial, and then say results, caffeine improved exercise performance. So I've just filled it out with one study, and in your own literature review you may have more detail than this. In fact, I'd expect more detail to be presented here, but this is just an example, and then you would have another study then in the second row, third row, and so forth. So once you've populated all of your table, and that is generally the way to go first, fill out your table with your information and then go about formatting it. So the way I like to format my tables is, firstly I like to make my titles bold, so just simple formatting, making it bold, and these should be centered, so you go into the center button, which is all in this home tab at the top here where you can format your text. Maybe you want to make the text a little bit bigger, so you can just format the text just like you would in a regular Word document. And then I want these cells to have the text in the center, so to do that I'm going to highlight them all, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to table properties. Then I'm going to come over to cell, and then I'm going to click center and then hit OK. What you may find is that Microsoft Word is a little bit buggy here, so as you can see it's happened to me, the first column hasn't centered itself. So the way I like to just work around that is by adding an extra space, and it seems to have fixed it there. Now what we need to do is we need to get rid of some of these lines because they're a little bit messy, it clutters it up. So the way I'm going to get rid of the lines to make it look like this table on the left is I'm going to highlight it all, and then I'm going to come to this tab at the top called Table Design, and I'm going to come to Border Styles or Borders, and I'm going to just put no border, and that's going to get rid of all the borders, and then I can add in the borders that I want after. To do that, I'm going to come then across to Border Painter, and you can see it's got all the borders in these dashed lines which are on my table. So generally we want to have a border at the top and at the bottom of our table, and then borders at significant parts that you want to break up on your table. So for example, I want to put a border between my titles and my studies, and then I may want to have individual borders between each studies, or I may not. Again, that's kind of up to you, but try and make it minimalist. So I'm just going to have a single border at the top, breaking my data and my titles, and then at the bottom. I'm going to click on Border Painter, and then it's going to be there and all formatted now. So that's pretty much it. I can then do any additional formatting that I want to make this more clear. What you will see is that if I hover my cursor, we get this little black arrow. If you left click and hold that, that's going to select it. But what you really want to get to is this icon here, where it has those two lines with the arrows either side. What that will allow you to do is that will allow you to increase the size or the width of your columns, which can be quite useful. So for example, if you have a column which only needs a very small amount of data in, you're probably going to want to make that column small and then give more space for the columns that need more information. So I'll show you an example here. So participants, this doesn't need much information, it's only got 12 males, so I'm going to drag this across and make this column smaller, and I'm going to then give more space for my results section. So I'm personalising the width of all the columns to allow the information to not be all scrunched up, give more space to where I need more information. If things start going out of hand and you want to reset, you can highlight your whole table, right click, and then go to distribute columns evenly, and that will give an even space into each column that you have, like so. And from that point onwards, you can fill in your second study, so Smith et al. 2020, 18 females. Again, this is just an example. You start populating out your table. Key thing to make sure once you're finished is I'm just going to drag this down a little bit, and then above it you're going to want to have your table caption. So if it's table number 1, i.e. the first table in your manuscript, then you're going to want to name it table 1, and this will just be a outline of the table. So for example, summary of studies found in the literature search. And then at the bottom you would put information that will help interpret the table. So for example, in this image on the left, it's given the source of the information, but in some cases you may want to have abbreviations, you may want to shorten things, and this would be where you illustrate what is that shortened thing. So for example, if I put in an outcome measure here, cycling TTE, this means time to exhaustion, but I don't want to write time to exhaustion out in full because that's long and it's going to make my table bloated. I would do this at the bottom. I'd write TTE equals time to exhaustion. And again, similarly, if I wanted to denote that there was a significant change, I could maybe put a symbol like a star here, make that a little bit bigger, and then I would perhaps add another line saying star. And what you have to do here is just stop it automatically creating a bullet point and put a star equals statistically significant, and then P less than 0.05. So that will also then allow me to keep my table nice and concise, and then the information that's required can just be slotted in the bottom there. Okay, that is pretty much it for how to create a table. So that's the general rules that you need to follow and how to format it. Like I said, there's no one size fits all for a given study or a given table that you need to create. So have a play around with it, have a play around with the formatting and the information you put in, and my advice would be to look at lots of other studies that you've got for your literature review, look at other systematic reviews and look at how they've presented their information and use that for inspiration, because those people who've published those papers in the similar fields to you that have included tables of systematic reviews or presenting data have put a lot of thought into it and are very experienced, so they're a good place to get inspiration from. Okay, hope you found that informative, and thank you for watching.